not the kind of person that you'd meet in the Harvard Club, who tends to stand for 4 days outside Yankee Stadium in the pollution waiting for a World Series ticket. And let me tell you, I'm guilty too, because I was one of these people. So don't think I'm on my high horse, because I'm really not. I was one of these people, but Mr. Katzman set me straight, although it took 4 or 5 years for his message to sink in, even longer. Mr. Katzman was my best friend's father, and he was a very smart man, and he was a very good man. And I remember once, it was 1970, I wasn't even 20 years old yet, but in those days I attended a minimum of 35 to 40 Yankee home games every season. I waited at the end of every game to see Ralph Houk come out. It wasn't I didn't get in those days, a general admission ticket, you'll faint, was $1.50. And we never bothered with box seats. We were real fans. So we sat in either section 1 or 3 or 2. In section 1, 2, or 3, way up in the upper deck, and that's where the real regulars, we knew everybody there. It was a great high old time because, and this was totally ecumenical, interracial, all ages. These guys would be there for every game. They were the real fans. It wasn't the potentates. It wasn't the swells who sat down in the box seats. These were the vox populi, the voice of the people. And we all were knowledgeable about baseball. In those days, I could practically manage. I could tell you who was pitching, where they tended to pitch. I had all the statistics from all the teams. I mean, really, I was into it. But then again, I'm pushing 20. I didn't particularly have ambitions. Oh, maybe I'd like to be an actor someday. But I wasn't honestly applying myself toward any profession. And one day I was up there at my friend Big Dave's apartment, and Mr. Katzman, who was an attorney and a good and smart man, said to both of us, he said, "You boys are wasting your time, and if you're not careful, you're going to waste your lives." Now, my friend Big Dave did a better imitation of his father than I did, but I don't have him here now. I'm telling you, now this... And he was so smart. He said, "Now this seems important, but listen to me. In 5 or 10 years, this will mean nothing, and you'll be nowhere in life. You go to the games every day, the two of you. Such a waste, such a waste." Well, I just thought he was an old gaffer. What did he know? And Big Dave and I laughed at him. And we went off to Yankee Stadium again. Ate a lot of cheap hot dogs and everything. Filled ourselves with sugared soda. Stayed out there. Ralph Houk came out. I remember I would buy Ralph Houk cigars. That's how much we loved him. Hey, Major. And one day... Well, let me tell you, we weren't pathetic in that regard because I was personal friends with manager Ralph Houk. The Major bothered with me almost every time I went to the Yankee Stadium. That's true. And Thurman Munson almost beat up Big Dave one day. I told you that story. My secret special guest in the studio is nodding with recognition. Wait till I unleash him on you a little later. Well, I'll get to the Munson story. But I'll tell you this. One night, Ralph Houk came out of the ballpark. Usually he was there alone. He was smoking a cigar. And we have to wait 2 hours to see him because don't forget, the manager stays, he showers, and he leaves last because he speaks to the press. And Houk was a great BS man. That's to say he was a verbal individual. He was not afraid to speak. He had a great wit, and he was a commanding presence. So we're waiting out there every night, and hiya, fellas. And he would talk to us, and I remember I told him, big genius. You sports fans will know. One night I tell him, I say, Nettles had just come over. And I said, Major, I think you're making a mistake. You imagine this? I'm telling Ralph Houk he's making a mistake. This is a major in the Marines in World War II. My view, I know people here, they insulted him at the end, and I don't like the fans who insulted Ralph Houk, because to my view, he's still the greatest manager and greatest personality that I ever experienced in baseball. And not just because he was nice to me, but that's a big part of it. So I said, Major, you know something? Don't play Nettles. Play Celerino Sanchez. Yeah, well, Yankee fans will remember Celerino Sanchez was there for about a year or two before Nettles, and I loved Celerino Sanchez. And he stops and he says, "What you have to understand, hi, boys." He knew us. "Hi, fellas." And now we're standing alone on River Andy. There's no cops. There's no guards. It's Ralph Houk and Jay Diamond and Big Dave standing in the front. Understand is, hey, kid, but what you have to understand is he's got no lateral movement. No lateral. He can't go to the sides. And let me tell you, Nettles is having a little trouble playing before the New York crowd. But have you analyzed his road statistics? Well, that's actually no, Major, and I thought I knew stuff. He says, do you realize this was July 2nd? He said, do you realize he's got 62 walks? I said, really? He gets on base, even if he hits 210 or 220, and this guy's great in the clutch. Well, let me tell you, he was right. He hit about 500 in the clutch. He could only, Nettles was only weak hitting with nobody on base. He averaged about 0.50 hitting with the bases empty, strikeouts, weak pop-ups. But the minute a guy was on second base, he hit 600. That was the greatness of Greg Nettles. Even though anyway, something else. He was mean to me once. But up at the state, do you remember were you there when he looked at me viciously? Yeah, that's right. All right. Anyway, but I digress, as a man with a grievance will often do, on the Barry Gray Show on Radio 710 WOR. All right, let me continue with Celerino Sanchez. So the major, Ralph Houk, is talking baseball with me on a regular basis. We're pals. I mean, two 18-year-old guys from Brooklyn, 19-year-old guys from Brooklyn who mentally were 8, because I wasn't thinking about a future or a career, and you can see that. But one night, we wait there after a twilight doubleheader. Now it's 1:30 in the morning, okay? And both games were extra innings. This is a true story. He comes out with his wife, Betty, a wonderful woman, and 2 little children, his grandchildren. It's 1:30. They've been playing baseball since 4:30 p.m. Ralph Houk comes out with Betty and 2 little kids rubbing their eyes. They're tired. He comes out, Major, oh, hi, boys. And we start talking about the game. Wasn't Medich great tonight? He said, wasn't he great? I said, yes. His wife says, Ralph, we have to go. It's 1:30. The children are tired. And she said, wait a minute. Can't you see I'm talking to the fellas? That's a true... This is one of the greatest men who ever lived. He tells his wife, with grandchildren rubbing their eyes at 1:30 in the morning, don't bother me. I'm talking to 2 kids from Brooklyn at 1:30 in the morning, standing on a deserted street in the Bronx. This comes first. That's why I love Ralph Houk. And that's why... But then Mr. Katzman was right. Because as the years went on and the baseball obsession continued, I realized this is getting me nowhere. These players don't know I exist. This is ridiculous. I'll be indigent for the rest of my life. He said to us, this is a fantasy. You're nursing a fantasy that you have some connection with this team. You're not manager of the team. You just think you are. If you 2 kids were to get hit by a truck tonight, the team would still be there. They don't even know you were alive. And he was right. He was right. He was a very wise man, Mr. Katzman. I still miss him. Anyway, the point is, finally, through life's pitfalls and a rake's progress, I understood that I had to do something with my life, and why shouldn't I? That I was merely focusing on the Yankees and on my obsession with baseball and the intricacies of the game and of the players' individual habits and strengths and weaknesses as a way of hypnotizing myself, as a way of diverting myself from the real responsibilities that any young fella has to face in life. And I believe that it's no accident that most of the people who have this obsession, who are willing to wait out on the street for 4 days, are indigent. They're not successful people. Let's face